welcome to the In the Game Room podcast. This is Alan, and I am in my workshop at my bench here. And the reason why I'm here again is because I've come up with an idea for a new segment or a new series, whatever you want to call it, for the In the Game Room podcast. Many of you who have been with me for a while, watching the podcast and whatnot, know that I spent my entire career as a commercial model maker, mostly in the aerospace industry, up until about 7.5 years ago when I started Gamecraft Miniatures. So I'm still technically a professional model maker, I guess, but I'm doing it manufacturing and things like that. I used to work for companies like Boeing and Raytheon and things like that, building models and mock-ups and prototypes and stuff. So that doesn't mean that I'm any better at it than anyone else, but I have been doing it for a long time. And one of the things that happens when you do that is you acquire a lot of very special tools and equipment. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tools that some of which you've probably never heard of. So I thought, a lot of the tools that I've collected over my career are specific to machining, woodworking, composites work, sculpting, all sorts of different aspects of model making and shop work. When you're a commercial model maker, you work in a lot of different materials. You have to do machining, you have to do welding, you have to do fabrication, woodworking. Did I say woodworking already? A lot of that. So you end up collecting a lot of tools. You end up collecting all the tools that a machinist would collect. You end up collecting all the tools that a carpenter would collect, that a cabinet maker would collect, a model maker. You collect all these things. And so I have, behind the camera right now, there's a couple of roll-away toolboxes that are taller than me, and they're completely all full of tools. I've got tools all over here. I've got tools all over here. Everywhere in the shop, there's another machinist toolbox over here that you can't quite see, full of tools. So, undoubtedly, I have tools that you've never heard of, and you don't know how they're used or how they could help you in your miniatures model making, whether you're making structures or you're carving figures or whatever you're doing. I probably have tools that would be very helpful in what you're trying to do. So that's where this idea came from. I'm going to call this little mini series, I'm going to call it Tool Tips. And they'll be pretty short, and basically they'll just take one or two specialty tools that I've collected throughout my career or even just recently, that you may not know about, and I'm just going to basically tell you what they are, what they're used for. There might be some demonstrations involved, but it's mainly just to familiarize yourself what the tool is and what it's used for, and then if you decide you want one, you'll go out and get one. Alright, so for today I have a couple of things I want to tell you about. Sitting here on the bench, so I need to move the camera over here where I can focus it on what we're talking about, and I'll be right back. Alright, so the first thing I want to tell you guys about is something that you probably haven't run into unless you have experience as a machinist, and that is something called an angle plate, and that's what this is here. These come in all different sizes. I don't think I've ever seen any smaller than this, but I've seen some big enough that you need a small crane to lift them, so they do come in a lot of different sizes. But this here is a 2" by 2" by 2" angle plate. And what this is exactly what it looks like. It's just a chunk of metal with a 90-degree angle here that's ground, precision ground to exactly 90 degrees, which isn't too critical in model making, the type of model making we do here, but when you're a machinist and you're working on precision things, that does make a difference. But anyways, they are exactly 90 degrees, and what I use them for all the time in the shop is when I'm assembling kits that are laser cut, either matte board like this or MDF or acrylic. I'll lay down a part and then I'll put another part here and then apply my glue and let it sit here, and this is keeping everything at exactly 90 degrees. It can also be used on the inside of a structure, if you're putting something together like this, you put it, you turn it up on its end and put it this way. You could use it that way if you had something that you needed to glue on the outside. Wouldn't really work in this case, but if you did, you could do it like that. It's a great weight if you need to put some weight on something, and then then do your gluing and make sure everything's 90. The main thing is keeps what you're working on perfectly square. So I don't think there's a whole lot more I can say about it. They're not terribly expensive and they're not terribly cheap either. These 2x2x2 angle plates come in a pair for about $26. I'll put a link in the description on itgrpodcast.com if you want to go out and get a pair of these. I really recommend them. While I'm on the topic of 90-degree square machinist things, the other good old standby is what's called a 1-2-3 block. If you can guess why this is called a 1-2-3 block, you win a prize. The reason why it's called a 1-2-3 block, if you've already given up, is that it's 1 inch by 2 inches by 3 inches. And when I say 1 inch by 2 inches by 3 inches, I don't mean 1 inch and 1,000th, or I don't mean 999 thousandths. I mean it's an inch. It's exactly an inch. Again, that's critical to machinists when they're setting up, not as critical to us. But this can be used in the same exact way as the little angle block can be used. You can use it when you're gluing things together to hold them at 90 degrees. You can use it as a weight and an angle. These are generally a little more expensive, especially if they're decent quality. I don't have a price on the top of my head right now, but I'll put something in the notes at itgrpodcast.com. Most machinists have at least a half a dozen of these. I've probably got at least that many scattered around the shop. They're just a good thing to have. So, moving right along, here's something that I've had versions of this in the past. This particular one here is new. I've had it for a couple of months, but I've had other ones in the past. This is something, goes by a lot of different names. Where I bought this from Amazon, they call it a universal work holder. These are very popular in jewelry making, and you'll find that a lot of jewelry making tools are useful in miniatures making, and a lot of the same skills and techniques and materials. There's a lot of crossover between jewelry making and miniatures making. But basically what this tool here is, it's a bit of a vise in the way, but most vices you'll put something in between the two jaws and then you'll close it up. That's not what you do with this. This uses these pins here. Let me get this right up here where you can see it. There's these little removable pins that you can put wherever you need them. And then once you've done that, you can take your miniature and put it in between those pins and then close it up until those pins push in on the miniature. What this allows you to do is clamp some very unusually shaped items that you couldn't clamp between two parallel vice jaws. If you have a piece of material that's squarish, without even moving these pins, I can just drop it right in there and close that up nice and tight, and that is in there really good. Now you can take one of your engraving tools or whatever and you can go in there and start working on that part. So it clamps down on things. It also clamps out. So if you have something circular, as a matter of fact, when this shipped to me, these were in really close, and it came with this little brass ring, which was on there. And then basically what you do is you open it up until it pulls out from the inside, and then theoretically you could be engraving on the outside of this ring or whatever. It comes with 3 screws and 3 holes in the bottom so you can screw it down to your table. I haven't done that for a variety of reasons. First of all, I have glass here, and second of all, I'm not a fan of having something mounted right on my desk right in the middle and having it be in the way when I'm not using it. So I think what I'm going to do is make a larger steel plate, maybe like about an 8-inch round plate, and screw this down to that plate. So when I set it on my workbench, it's something that's really heavy and really sturdy, so I can, be working on something and it's not going to fall over. And that way I can put it away when I'm done. Also comes with a little Allen wrench, and this goes into this this screw here, and you can loosen it, and then you can move this around to any angle that suits you, and then tighten it back up. And that is really about the only flaw in this thing. Once you get it in the position you want it and tighten it back up, if I try hard enough, I don't even have to try very hard at all, actually, I can still move it. But I mean, obviously you're not going to be chiseling with a hammer and beating on it with a rivet gun or anything like this. This is for very very delicate work. So the fact that it still moves is really not a big problem. But I'm just mentioning it so that if you tighten this and expect that it's fixed right there and it's never going to move, forget it. That's not the case. It will still move. It takes a bit of effort, but it will still move. So that is a universal work holder. It sells, this particular model sells for a retail price of around $30. I'll also put a link for that in it. But it's a cool tool, and it's definitely something that, it's one of those tools, like a lot of model making tools, that once you find that you need it for something, nothing else is going to do the job. Nothing else is going to hold something with a base on it like this figure, and that base is not even perfectly round. It has a kind of an oblong shape. So having these 4 pins in there, you could even do, if you had a really unusual shape, you can even do 3 pins. That way you're contacting it on 3 points, and just tighten it down, and that is on there really good. That figure is not going anywhere. So if you had to get in there and do some carving or whatever, or even just for painting, it would be a handy tool to have. So this is a really cool thing. It is, again, the universal work holder. It's about $30, and I'm liking it, and I've used it on several occasions already. Like I said, I've had other ones in the past, some that weren't quite as nice, but this one's pretty nice. I like it, and I'm going to continue using it. And the bottom actually has rubber pads on it, so when I set it here on this glass, it is kind of not wanting to move around as much as you might expect. So it's pretty cool. Well, that's it for now. Just real quick, all of these tooltip videos, I'm going to keep them short and just introduce you to a couple of things that I think you may otherwise never see on your own, and hopefully I can enlighten you on some cool model making tools. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming and or model making.